I mean, she is monstrous. He is monstrous. He has the same views. He thinks that Israel should not exist. He has said so. He may purport to like Jews, but he only likes the kind of Jews who hate other Jews and who hate Israel and want to destroy Israel. And so he uses Jews to divide the Jewish community of New York.
One thing that happened on 7th of October, alongside all the things you've just mentioned there, is that the wife of the future mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani, his wife Rama Duwaji, she was liking posts that celebrated what was happening in Israel. And she was giving a heart, which is what you do on Instagram. She was giving a heart to images of Hamas's invasion, the collapse of the fence, and people sitting on top of an IDF tank and so on. And my initial response when I saw these reports, I'm sure you've seen them as well, is that, well, maybe she didn't understand how awful it was on that day. But no, months later, in 2024, she was liking posts that denied Hamas's sexual crimes against the women of southern Israel. I found it very difficult to communicate to people just how serious it is that the mayor of New York is married to a woman who would let's be honest about it, who would give a heart to the worst mass murder of Jews since the Holocaust. That's what we're talking about here. What have you made of that story? What do you think that tells us about, not only about Mamdani and New York, but I guess that new politics that is creeping up in the Western world?
Well, it's monstrous. I mean, she is monstrous. He is monstrous. He has the same views. He thinks that Israel should not exist. He has said so. He may purport to like Jews, but he only likes the kind of Jews who hate other Jews and who hate Israel and want to destroy Israel. And so he uses Jews to divide the Jewish community of New York. I'm afraid to say many of whom voted for him, because this is another topic, maybe, about 3/4 of American Jews are liberally and left-wingly inclined, and they voted for him in great number. Whether they're having buyer's remorse now, I'm not sure. But it is a monstrous situation. These people are monsters. They support monsters. They support people who not only slaughter, but rape and torture in a most sadistic way Israelis on October 7, 2023, and would do the same again. And it's like a psychopathy. And it's not just them. I mean, I'm looking at the faces and behavior of people in Britain and in the equivalent demonstrations in Australia, in Canada, and you see the same contorted hatred of Jews. And you think, well, what's going through their minds? Why do they hate Jews? Most of them never met a Jew. They don't know anything about Judaism. They know nothing about the Middle East, nothing about Israel. But they have been taught that this is what passes for conscience. They observe that their entire peer group thinks this. And it's like the madness of crowds. It's the herd. You follow the herd. And we've seen this over and over again. We've seen the kind of, it's almost like a kind of herd or mob hysteria that takes over in support of a cause. I mean, I wasn't around at the time. I'm not that old, but nevertheless, I read that something like this took over the educated classes in the 1930s over Stalin. They all thought Stalin was just the bee's knees. They thought that, Stalinism was going to bring about, as it said on the tin, the brotherhood of man and the perfect society and so on. And they simply didn't want to hear about the millions and millions of people who were being slaughtered and locked up and tortured and abused. I mean, how does one account for this? How does one account for the fact that, so many in Germany supported Nazism? I mean, we can all find specific reasons for all these things. One can root it in an economic situation, in the politics of the time, in what had happened in previous wars to the population, and all these things are perfectly valid reasons, but they don't really get to the heart of it. Why people can suspend reason in the way that they have, in the way that they do. And to me, this is almost the most frightening thing of all, because, you look at these faces, you look at these people, even in kind of private, quiet conversations where no one's looking at them from outside, you present facts and evidence. You say, well, that can't be true because look at this. And it's like you hit a brick wall. There is simply no way facts and evidence can penetrate. Why is that? I mean, what we're living through in this ostensibly the most rational age ever known to man, what we're looking through is a complete eclipse of reason and rationality. And how can that possibly be when everyone's now so well educated relative to what they were? Well, the answer, I think, comes back to what happened more than half a century ago, which is that in the universities, in the academy, in the intelligentsia, the idea of objective truth was simply abolished. From that point, everything became a matter of opinion. If there was no truth, there were no lies. If you said something was a lie, well, that was just your opinion. And if you are somebody that I disapprove of, then your opinion is worthless. It's like that. That's what's happened. And so, if you abolish truth, you abolish reason. If you abolish reason, you get the embrace of lies. And if you get the embrace of lies, you have a society which comes off the moral guardrails completely and goes hurtling into a kind of anarchy of behavior, both on the streets, as we increasingly see, and in people's minds. There is no moral compass anymore.
The difficulty in getting through to people these days is incredibly pronounced. I feel it all the time on an issue like Israel, what's happening in the Middle East, but then also on something like the trans question. Even explaining to people that there are men and women just kind of slides off them because they kind of bow down to these cultish beliefs. On that topic, I did want to ask you for your views on Gorton and Denton and the by-election there, where Hannah Spencer of the Greens won. She appeared to ride to power on the back of an Islamic vote, or a certain way of voting within certain constituencies there. Did you follow that? And what do you think that told us about our old friend, the Islamo left, in terms of those alliances that have been forged for quite some time now between these kind of suicidal leftists, increasingly arrogant Islamists, and this kind of union that they forged over the recent years?
Yeah, well, it's something that I wrote about in 2010 in a previous book, The World Turned Upside Down. I had a chapter called, I think it was the Red, Black, Green, Brown Alliance, or something like that. I mean, the colors all change, basically, depending on whether you think Islamists are brown or black. But anyway, it's basically the forces of the left, the old left. I say it's like Labour people, Labour Party people, and then the Greens, who've become the forces of the left and are more extreme, and then the kind of Corbynistas, who are very similar to the Greens. In fact, they're kind of interchangeable. And they've hooked up with Islamists to basically bring about two things. I mean, it is quite comical, given that the Islamists, given that people on the left have certain causes dear to their hearts, such as, for example, gay rights. And, the Islamists would have their head off their shoulders in a trice in other circumstances. But they're marching shoulder to shoulder because they're united by two things: a desire to bring down the West or Western civilization, even though they have completely diametrically opposite views about what they want to replace it with, and their hatred of Jews, their hatred of Israel and their hatred of Jews. So you've got this unholy alliance. And I looked at, Hannah Spencer and this terrible man, Zach, whatever his name is, Polanski. I mean, they are beyond a joke. They are risible. They are so ignorant and so stupid. And so they mouth not just imbecilities, but, you'd basically be horrified if your 6-year-old were to come up with the kind of things that they're saying. And the terrible thing is they're being taken seriously because there's this enormous constituency now who are absolutely infantilized, who know nothing, can't think, only know what to think, and they're all following them. And I mean, it's hard to credit, but I can easily see a situation at the next election, whenever that is. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen in between in terms of British domestic politics. But I can easily see a situation in which you have a fractured right wing between the Conservative Party and Reform. And we can see Reform is now possibly fracturing into other little groupuscules that think that Reform isn't quite the right thing. But so you have a kind of fractured right and then a fractured left between Labour, Green, Islamists. But nevertheless, these fractures can all come together and basically hurt each other. And with the population so bewildered by all this, but nevertheless latching on to, I support the Greens, I support the Islamists, I support Reform, I like Farage, I don't like the other guy. I mean, no one can say what can happen, but it's quite possible that people will find, even though people go around, I hear people saying the whole time, well, the only good thing about the way Starmer is behaving is that this makes sure that we'll never again in my lifetime have a Labour government. Well, no, it could easily happen that you have a coalition between the forces of the left, which would be even worse than Starmer. The Labour Party in some form, the Greens, and the Islamists. You can easily see that happening. I mean, this is horrendous.
If you have a 401k or an IRA, please listen. Gold is at record highs. What many people don't know is this: you can move part of your retirement money legally and without tax penalties into physical gold you actually own. Alpha Omega Gold helps you do this through a gold IRA. Your gold is real. It is stored safely. It is in your name. Learn more at ao.gold/stand. Alpha Omega Gold is our sponsor, and they proudly stand with Israel.